Before heading off to a session to play Sekiro last week, I collected some questions from my YouTube community page, and I did take them along to the session so that I could hopefully get the answers that you guys were looking for. Now, obviously, these answers are completely based on my experience in this limited play session. The full game wasn't available there were lots of stuff locked out, there was areas locked off because obviously I don't think Activision is just going to start showing people stuff they haven't officially announced yet. So I have done my best to answer the questions that you guys sent in. There were some duplicate ones and there is some stuff that I simply can't answer, and I did ask the Activision rep there some of these questions and sometimes got a little bit of an answer and sometimes didn't, but I did my best, so let's jump in. First question from Kato Gaming or Kato Gaming was frame rate ? The frames were at least 60 FPS all the way through. I've reviewed my footage and it obviously recorded in 1080p 60 frames because it was an Elgato capture device, and every single frame in the 60 FPS capture is individual, so there were no dips below 60, and it could have been running at far higher than 60. You know, it could have been running at 144. The monitor there was, I'm pretty sure, 144 Hertz. So I don't know if there were dips below whatever it was running at, but it was definitely above 60 and it was smooth. Like, it seemed smooth. There weren't really any bad frame pacing issues or anything like that that I could see. Next question from the legendary Zoltan. Is it hard like Dark Souls? What stats are there and what is customizable? So is it hard like Dark Souls? Yes, this is a hard game. You will be dying very much like you do in Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Neo and everything like that. You learn by dying. Essentially, that's how you learn what the boss does. The general way to approach a situation, you will generally die and then come back. But in Sekiro, there is a mechanic, an item that lets you resurrect on the spot. So you don't get sent back way further back to like a campsite. So that is a limited resource though, so you can't just infinitely respawn right in front of the place you just died, but it does give a cool little like second chance. Like, you got the boss down to 5% and then he hits you with one of his insta-kill moves, you can resurrect on the spot, and you've got that, you have that encounter down. It's just maybe you lapsed a little bit in concentration right at the end. It's a neat little thing to have in there, but it's still a very hard game. You still have to plan out how you want to approach an enemy camp. It is an open world game and there will be different camps and there will be different enemies inside. You have to manage some of your items. I talked about in my little impressions video was there are special weapons that you have, but they all use the same resource. So you have an axe that can break shields, and you also have a flamethrower that can set people on fire, and you have throwing stars. Throwing stars can take out weaker enemies, like you can throw them and kill them before they get a chance to react. But if you use up all your charges on that, you're not going to be able to break shields if there are shield bearers in the camp. So you're going to have to plan that out. There's a big emphasis on stealth kills, getting the guys around the outside, and the ones that alert certain things is like old women banging on tambourines and stuff to alert people. So yeah, it's a stealth thing. It's a hard game. As far as stats and customizable, I talked about the secondary weapons there. There are also health potions. They're not called health potions, but that's essentially what they are. And there are similar things like that, but I didn't get to see much of what's customizable. Most of that was locked out, and I asked and didn't get much of an answer. Hopefully there will be a little bit more than that, but you've got secondary weapons and you've got items like health potions and that kind of thing, as well as the resurrection stones or whatever they call them. Angry Corn asked, does it retain the same Dark Souls difficulty? I sort of just answered that one, but can you tell if there will be recurrent monetization? So I can't say for 100% if there will or won't be. Most people would say it is Activision, so it would be crazy to assume there won't be, but I don't know. There was no evidence of it in the game, And apart from maybe selling the resurrect item, the item that resurrects you on the spot, maybe selling extras of those, I'm not entirely sure what they would sell to you. This sort of seems like a game that would probably benefit more from like a story DLC kind of deal rather than microtransactions, but they may sell story DLC. They may sell those resurrect stones as a microtransaction. There was just no evidence of it in this little slice that I played. I can't say either way, and of course the Activision rep was tight-lipped on that. This video isn't sponsored by Secret Lab, but I did have the opportunity to review one of their chairs recently and I absolutely loved it. If you are in the market for a comfortable gaming chair, you can check out their range using my affiliate link in the video description, which can really help the channel out. Mystery asks, story mode, is the story flushed out? Is that meant to be fleshed out? I'm not sure, but either way. Any collectibles or puzzles throughout the world, and is the game world opened? Is the world nicely developed? A lot there. I won't spend too much time. The story mode, it's a story-driven game, so it should have more story than Dark Souls, even Bloodborne. You know, I only get to see a little bit of it, so I don't know how fleshed out the story actually is, but it is set in Sengoku, Japan, so there is like a rich sort of history to drag from there. It's a very underused era from Japanese history, so it should be pretty good. I imagine it'll be pretty good. In terms of collectibles, I didn't see any. I can't say that there was anything that stood out to me. There are these areas you can pray at to get your secondary weapons resources up, so you can get your axe and throwing stars back up. But I didn't see much other than that. That isn't to say that there isn't any. And in terms of puzzles, I would say that just the general layout of camps and the way you approach a situation is a puzzle in and of itself, because you'll see a bunch of enemies around and you have to choose what you're going to use in terms of your secondary weapons. You have to choose how you're going to approach it, stealth around, take enemies out. I think the whole sort of system is a puzzle. And the game world, it's open. It was very closed in the slice that I got to play for obvious reasons. They blocked off a lot of areas specifically, and they even said restrict capture for certain areas that we were allowed into. It seems very nicely developed. It seemed the layout and everything seemed smooth, and it is said to be open world. So I imagine it should be pretty good if it follows that same formula. Golden Oracle 64, how do you think it will stack up to previous fan favorite From Software titles? I think it will be very good. I can't see why it wouldn't be. This seems like it has the largest budget that From Software have ever worked with. You know, I said in the impressions video that Dark Souls and even Bloodborne were mid-budget titles. I think some people assumed that was like an insult or something to them, but no, it's a compliment, because From Software can take really a very medium budget. When we're talking about Bloodborne, the estimates for that were 20 million. That's tiny for AAA, like for a Sony published game. That's a tiny amount. Even God of War 3 had a budget of 44 million. So we're talking about mid-budget from Software generally, and they do a damn good job with their mid-budgets. But this does not seem like that kind of thing. This seems like full-on AAA budget. They had a lot more to work with than they usually would, and it's got all that same stuff there. It has the perfect sort of gameplay. The structure and everything like that is From Software. It's very good, and it's exactly what they do. Except on top of that, they just have much prettier graphics. They have really nice cutscenes. They have really nice animated sequences. They have mocap by the looks of it, you know, rather than, you know, and even facial mocap. So it seems like it should be very good, and it seems like a lot of people should like it. It's basically more of From Software, but with a larger budget than they're used to. Hoodie asks, will it have an actual story, and also how would you compare the gameplay to Neo? So the actual story, I think I've spoken a little bit about that. It seems like it'll be good. It seems like it'll have probably the most story of any From Software game previously. And how does the gameplay compare to Neo? I would say that, it still has that same feel. It has that Souls-like feel that they all seem to have, the difficulty and just the sort of gameplay flow. But the actual combat itself is definitely quicker paced. It's definitely, it just feels quicker and more responsive, and you can parry and deflect things with the right click, and the left click is your actual attack, and it just seems like everything just feels quicker, even though it still feels relatively the same. It's kind of hard to explain, but even in terms of the environments, I would say that Sekiro is more open, even though Neo wasn't exactly closed or claustrophobic. It certainly just feels like in Sekiro you have more freedom. Keykeeper816, some people have said the quick blocking almost becomes a rhythm game at times. I guess mostly how does the increased speed affect it as a Souls-like game? So this sort of ties into what I was just talking about there. So you have the quick blocking, which is like a parry with your right click, and that does happen incredibly fast. Like you can do that almost instantly, but there are attacks from the enemy that are unblockable or unparryable, and likewise you can get into a combo type structure where you start doing attacks that can't be blocked either. Now you can go through a series of blocks and attacks where it sort of does feel like you're holding a rhythm, because if there are like two enemies in front of you and they're both swinging one after the other, you're just going ting 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 until you decide to sort of jump in there, or maybe set one of them on fire so they leave you alone for a minute. It could feel like a rhythm game, but it's not like, it's not like Bayonetta quick or Devil May Cry quick. It's like nothing like that. It still feels so much like a Souls-like game. It's just a different take on the combat. It's just a little bit quicker and a little bit different. It's just not so. I want to say it's not as punishing, but it is. It's just as punishing, but somehow it just doesn't feel like. It just feels more responsive, I guess, even though, it's Dark Souls and Bloodborne aren't exactly unresponsive. Just Sekiro just feels, everything feels a little bit quicker paced. Boozer Wizard, how far would you say it deviates from Dark Souls if you have experience in that field? Because I really just don't want this game to be like Dark Souls 2.0. So I, as some people found out in the impressions video, I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm not a fan of Dark Souls. I actually really want to like Souls-like games. There are just so many cool things about it. I love the atmospheres. I love the whole idea behind it, but they've never really clicked with me gameplay-wise. I just kind of find the loop and the structure of it to be a little bit tedious, I guess. You're sort of doing a very similar thing over and over again, and you're dying and then you're coming back, and it's just never really clicked to me. It's just something I just don't really enjoy, even though I have always wanted to, and I was hoping that Sekiro did enough different that it would be like, finally, Souls-like has clicked for me, and it didn't quite do that. So it is different, definitely. It's quicker paced. There is more emphasis on a story. There is just more, I would like, sort of a more production polish in general. It runs really well and it looks really nice, and there are cutscenes and there's a in-depth story and it's open world. There is definitely enough there to differentiate it from Dark Souls. But I wouldn't say that it deviates so far that it couldn't be considered like a Dark Souls 2.0. It still has a very similar gameplay structure. It still feels to play. It still feels a lot like Dark Souls, has that same punishing feel, and just, I don't know, the atmosphere and that kind of thing all still feels distinctly From Software, but it should offer long-time fans of From Software something new and different. As I've been saying multiple times in here, it definitely seems like this has the highest budget of a game they've ever done, so it should offer something for you diehard fans out there who want to have it deviate a little bit from what you've been enjoying so much. So this one from Barkev, and I'm not going to try and pronounce that last name there, I don't want to ruin it for you. I love my From games, but does the Activision moniker hinder the experience at hand? If the game is really great with no strings attached, then do corporate politics matter? I probably won't get back into the corporate politics part. It just depends how much Activision was actively involved in the project. You know, we've seen what it's like with EA when they aren't actively involved in the project. We get Apex, and when they are, we get Anthem. So you know, it really just depends on how much Activision was sort of was driving the project with From. If they said, hey, we want a big AAA budget Dark Souls, here's the money, do the thing that you do. If they did that, then I would say that, you know, it wouldn't really matter at all, because From Software is just doing things business as usual. And in terms of Sekiro, as I said previously, because I couldn't really see any evidence of like, you know, microtransactions and monetization and that kind of thing. I don't really know how much Activision involvement there was, and I don't know if it is going to hinder it or not. As I say, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much opportunity for microtransactions and aggressive monetization, and I think the game at hand is going to be very good and a complete experience. And it doesn't feel as if anything has been shoved in, you know, from an Activision side. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, you know, you have to do this From Software. It doesn't feel like basically what I'm trying to say is it feels just very much like a Dark Souls game. It doesn't seem like their creative approach or their vision or anything has been hindered. But again, I only got to play a small amount of it, so I can't really say one way or the other. And finally, this question, which came up a lot: how strong are the RPG elements, or what are the RPG elements? Armor and weapon variety, customization, this kind of thing. Basically, all of this was locked out. So I don't know. Like, it has been said that it will have RPG elements, that you'll have things like you know, different weapons and that kind of thing. I've talked a bit about the secondary weapon system and the items, but other than that, I just simply don't know, and I couldn't get an answer for you despite me trying. So I guess we'll just have to see. I'm sure there will be another big trailer before they launch, which will detail a bunch more gameplay stuff. And that about wraps it up. So thanks for sending in your questions. I hope that you guys got some answers. I apologize, you know, that I can't answer everything, and it really is just based on my experience and the tiny little snippets that I could get from the Activision rep. I'm semi looking forward to Sekiro. I'm still going to pick it up, and I'm going to give it a proper shot, you know, even though I don't think it will change my opinion, or I don't think it'll change my enjoyment of Souls-like games. I think it's going to be a very good game, especially for fans of From Software. So yeah, watch out for the game on the 22nd of March. I hope you guys are excited, and I'll see you all soon.